Hello and welcome back to Talking Giants. Today is January 20th, 2026. John Harbaugh is going to be formally introduced as the next head coach of the New York Football Giants. Sean Marash will be at the press conference. Huge. WFAN will be airing it live if you're going to be in the car, if you're going to be working. And then I'm also sure Giants.com, Giants YouTube, and all that is going to be live streaming it as well. Sean, how are you doing?
I'm excited, Justin. It's good to see that this deal is officially done. That would have been a real kick in the ass if you and I stayed up until 2 a.m. for something to completely fall through. But look, I'm fired up, man. Blue skies ahead. And I have to be honest, Justin, I watched all of the divisional round playoff football, obviously mainly with the Patriots and Bears, with this thought of, Jesus Christ, can we be playing in these games next year? I know we might be getting ahead of ourselves, but why not? Why not dream this weekend? Why not?
Well, dude, I mean, that's where I want to first start. Before we get to the 3-day waiting period of it officially happening, right? Mm-hmm. It's crazy how many times we've, gone through the definition of official over the last week. But before we get to that, I think the coolest thing that's just come out of Harbaugh at the start, and we're going to hear more of it by the time you may be listening to this. You may have already listened to the presser, but Ian O'Connor put out the piece. I think the Giants roster is strong, Harbaugh says, and it's our job to make it stronger. We are going to compete for the playoffs and for championships. I want to make the playoffs. I expect and want to make the playoffs next year, Sean. Bringing back standards. The standard has been raised, and that's awesome.
Yeah, it is. And look, if the Giants don't make the playoffs next year, and believe me, we will get there. I don't think I'm going to scream and yell in John Harbaugh's first year that they didn't, but it's just good to know that this is a coach who has done this, been in the playoffs a million times while the Giants have not over the last decade, and wants to set that precedent. And that alone, like that, Justin, I go back to something you pounded into my head that I can't shake. The disease of losing in the Giants locker room. How do you eradicate that disease? Bringing in a coach and the culture. Everybody wants to talk about culture wins at the end of it. This is real culture stuff. And setting that precedent with a comment like that, that's erasing the disease of losing, bro. That is, I apologize to offend anybody. That's a chemo treatment to the disease of losing. Like, you zap the hell out of that with John Harbaugh's quotes, and that fires me up.
Yeah, we'll get more of that, obviously, Wednesday. I'm not going to freak out over the pressure. I have freaked out over pressures before, whether that be positively or negatively. I guess the judge presser has forever set me in a different direction. Like, I'm not going to take anything from it. Will I get excited by it? Yes. Well, seeing John Harbaugh in Giants gear that isn't just photoshopped and photos and jersey swap type stuff, that will be really cool. And actually getting pictures of it and actually getting videos of it and talking about the team and him talking about the roster, that will be very cool. And I will appreciate that. But I'm not taking any kind of like big football things out of it. Besides, he is going to be asked, Sean, about what was the delay, what was basically the 3-day delay, because you have Wednesday night, Thursday morning. We celebrate and the news breaks that he is going to be the coach of the Giants. And then I don't think it was until Saturday at around 3:30.
So right before the games on Saturday. Right before the games.
It's when I decided just to rip a quick live stream and just be like, all right, yeah, it's officially done. Now let's speculate kind of this power structure and the structure that's been reported. So what was the delay? Like I said, Saturday, 3:30, he officially signs. What I think made people anxious, Sean, and I know you have a lot of, you had your own online battles like you sometimes do.
Yes,
what I think made people feel anxious is the wording of the reports as to why there was a delay. The reports of initially that they were working on a few minor details and it all being contractual and the lawyers and the billing hours, that just was not the full story. I don't think it takes 3 days to simply just work out a coaching contract. They were obviously discussing power and structure. That's been very heavily reported now, and we'll talk about that.
Yes. Right. So it wasn't just because the contract was 40 pages and hefty and attorneys were billing hours. More on that later.
And $20 million a year.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's simple stuff. Look, the Giants have done things a certain way for what feels like forever in our lifetimes, right? With power structure and reporting and the million things that we have talked about on various shows, Justin, and you and I know in our short time together have talked about this, the idea of like, everything through the New York Giants, like the family connections inside, outside, the people that have been there for years and years and years, over 1 million turnover in every different facet of the organization. Like, we're not just talking about just straight like, hey, Joe Schoen's been here, right? Because everybody just kept going to the Joe Schoen thing. All of that stuff, it either takes years to then kind of like extinguish some of that stuff, or it takes a really powerful person coming into the organization at a desperate time to do that. And that's exactly what this was about. John Harbaugh came from a successful system in Baltimore. John Harbaugh was successful not just because he's a good football coach, but because the organization gave him the resources and ran things a certain way that John Harbaugh liked to operate. And that results in, an oozing amount of wins, even if there was only one Super Bowl there, where he ultimately wins. And John Harbaugh is not going to take a job at 63 years old without some kind of comfort from that, knowing what it takes to kind of get in and out. And I think that for the Giants, whatever happened at that dinner over the zucchini and fish and chicken and everything that was reported in that cellar, I'm sure they discussed a bunch of terms on this. But my guess is when they got to kind of that final, like, all right, here's my agent, your agent, let's hammer this out. I'm not sure if the Giants themselves took just as serious as John Harbaugh was about certain things, that like he legitimately needed these certain things in writing that they would get accomplished. I know Ian O'Connor had a piece on that we're going to delve into with some of the quotes he had. But this wasn't just about, hey, I don't like Joe Schoen, I'm making draft decisions. Joe Schoen was there in all the recruitment process. And I'm sure this was about, hey, this guy doesn't have a great track record. I will work with him, but I'm not answering to him. But it was so much deeper than that, Justin.
I think I nailed this Wednesday night, Thursday morning when we did this, when we were talking about this exact thing. Now, I think the main crux of what we were talking about was the working relationship with Joe Schoen, but also acknowledging that there's so much more that goes into running a football team, right? And I said, John Harbaugh's not going to be a yes man. He's just not like, all right, here's all the money in the world. You could take care of your staff members. While that's all great, and I'm not saying that that's a bad, it's certainly a great thing. And I'm glad the Giants flexed their muscles. They flexed the $1 billion investment they just got. They flexed that they are the Giants and all that kind of stuff, right? Be the Giants. But I knew that he wasn't just going to be a yes man. And if the Giants simply just bowed down to him in all these negotiations, that may actually turn Harbaugh off. Like, Harbaugh is a guy over the last 18 years that the Ravens have done things a very, very particular way. And I think they've done things very well. And I think even like they haven't had a ton of turnover in their front office. Obviously, Ozzie Newsome moves on and they bring in Eric DeCosta, but they kind of did that very seamlessly, right? Why do they do that seamlessly? Why are they able to go through staff members, offense coordinators, defensive coordinators, promote guys from within? It's because I think that they got their shit and their ducks in a row, right? And what do the Giants not have?
Their shit and their ducks in a row?
They have their shit and ducks in a row, maybe with the bad ways of doing things.
Okay, yeah. But not a successful way, that's for sure.
But not in a successful way, right? So I'm taking credit for it, not we. I thought I nailed that Wednesday night. I just did not anticipate that it would be a 3-day waiting period for it to be officially official. Did you get nervous at all?
I got asked this a lot. I know Evan brought this up to me. He was trying to pin nervousness. I want to explain. I was never nervous because the Giants could not get this done. Like, they just couldn't. Knowing the position they were in when Chris Mara goes out to meet him and then Tisch is flying his plane, like, ultimately you did all of that and preach that you wanted a CEO type of head coach, come to the agreement with a CEO type head coach. Then what, you find out he really is a CEO type head coach and you're going to let that have the deal crumble. So I never truly thought they would let it get to that point. I know this is a huge legacy hire here for John Mara. I know that word's been put out there, but my nervousness came from, like, we don't know John Harbaugh. And like how much semi-hardball or like even little resistances before John Harbaugh just goes, you know what, I have other suitors here. Like, you guys clearly don't have your crap together. And to be frank, the Giants still hadn't earned our trust back fully, even though we had said that when they agreed upon the deal. So I'm not saying I was nervous, but there was at least a portion of me as Friday night continued to accelerate. And I got certain text messages where I thought, Jesus Christ, there's a chance like they do screw this up. I don't think it's a high chance because I think only the Giants can't not let it. But yeah, I mean, it sat there a little bit. Even if it was like 5%, it sat there, Justin.
I didn't feel anything because you want to know why? Everybody and their mother said that it was going to get done and it was going to get done and it was going to get done. What initially threw me off is that this isn't just minor lawyer details Like they were talking like legit structure. So I think that reporting in the beginning was maybe factual at the time, but then it became very untrue, where it doesn't take 3 days to work through minor details. These were not minor. Sure. These were not minor details. So
right, they are not the norm. That was not the norm. That was not the norm of length for a coach to get that done.
So let's get to Ian O'Connor's piece and break down kind of what's at play here.
Okay, so before we get to the full piece, just to add to that nervousness, there is the other Ian O'Connor part of it where he texted John Harbaugh on Friday night.
Oh, yeah.
And John Harbaugh gave him the shrug, like, I don't know if it's going to get that. Like, when you see that should, if you were nervous on Friday night, that is the smoking gun that you had the right to be. You had the right to be.
And that's why I was so surprised to, like, Ian was still so, and I'll spoiler alert, I'm hopefully going to have him on Wednesday for a Thursday release. I will ask him, like, you get that text message. How are you still like, yeah, this is going to happen? A shrug emoji is what he got sent on a Friday night. Yeah. And apparently it was also like a last minute dinner between him and Chris Mara on Friday night that also happened around that same time too. So we'll get the full timeline.
A lot of meals between those sides.
But I want to at least get our opinions out there on what has been reported, where, I want the back end of the show for this week. I want it to be very informational heavy. You make your own, you create your own assumptions from that. But I want this show to be based on what's been reported and written. I want our opinions to come out there. So the biggest thing that Harbaugh needed was assurance on what the Giants' reporting structure was going to be, among other various ways the organization is run. Ian O'Connor. Harbaugh needed it in writing that he would report to John Mara and not Joe Schoen, a fact that ran counter to the way the Giants have conducted business. New York has historically been a GM-centric organization, even with tough guy coaches and two-time champions Bill Parcells and Tom Coughlin. Harbaugh was pushing ownership to change to a more coach-driven model, and it was taking time to get there. Thoughts initially?
Okay, my thoughts initially were, again, I think the holdup was he asked for this. Ownership probably said, yeah, I mean, that's something we can work on. And then I think they were thrown for a loop when it had to be in writing. Look, here's the bottom line. I have always, but maybe this is just my brain being trained in a way that the Giants have taught me to be trained, have believed that a GM and coach should work in synergy, both report to, ownership. When you put it that way, as far as like, hey, I report to ownership, the GM also reports to ownership. And Tiki actually tipped me off to this on the show today, and I thought he brought up a good point. Go back to that offseason Hard Knocks. And anytime we saw John Mara on camera, he was always meeting with Joe Schoen. And whenever he saw Brian Daboll or met with Brian Daboll, it was also with Joe Schoen in the room. That doesn't have to be the case. And a guy like John Harbaugh, who has that much pedigree, knows what the hell he's doing. He's a football guy that's run the organization. I have zero issue with him wanting that structure. And I think, honestly, even if you may be out there hesitant and going, well, what does that mean? That means you're not, you're kind of going, behind the GM's back. That's really not what it means. And when you think about the successful GMs and front offices that Baltimore's had, you could argue it just works more with synergy. You report to ownership. You're a football guy. You're handling all the stuff on football. It should not be that big a detriment or an issue.
I mean, we know this, but I think this getting actually written out in writing, right? Harbaugh signs via DocuSign, which I find to be funny. I don't know about you. I sign my contracts via DocuSign now.
I do too. Yes.
Was it like
I believe fancy... I signed my Talking Giants deal via DocuSign.
Well, yeah, John Boy Media uses DocuSign. Free ad, free plug. What this tells me, and again, we know this. Joe Schoen and John Harbaugh are on equal footing. Like, there's no accountability chart that says John Mara, Joe Schoen, John Harbaugh. It is now like you both report to the same person. You both are on equal footing. I think most importantly, that's what that establishes. Now, we knew that would happen, but I think having that in writing establishes that fact. Agree?
Establishes that fact. And I don't know if you want to get here, but then my only follow-up question to that would be that they're never going to answer this at a press conference. Is Joe Schoen still not long for this job now once Harbaugh starts reporting to ownership?
He has 1 year left on his contract.
You know what I mean?
There's been no whispers of an extension or anything.
Right. And Harbaugh could say all the right things about Joe, and I'm sure Joe has done the right things, and maybe they will have a good working relationship. And And Joe kind of, hey, he gets contracts done that John wants to get done. Like, is a GM basically through that light, and he could recommend certain things that fit the team and talk up certain players he's brought in. But ultimately here, like they've already gotten ahead on the scouting, the draft stuff. John Harbaugh's probably going to make most of those calls in the draft room based on the information he's gotten from Joe Schoen and his team. But like, without an extension here, if John Harbaugh's reporting right to him, are we confident that because they're reporting back and forth that this doesn't ultimately become John Harbaugh hires a GM in a year?
And I wonder what this means for the front office right now, even besides Joe Schoen, about, you're talking scouts, you're talking scouting department, you're talking director of player personnel, you're talking, Dennis Hickey's role, Brandon Brown's role as the assistant general manager. Is there going to be some sort of shakeup there, or just will there be a year where things are status quo? He gets the lay of the land, and then moves are made and decisions are made once Joe Schoen's contract is up. I don't know.
Track that website, Doug Analytics. Track that website right after the draft. Let's start seeing week by week if some pieces start getting rearranged on that website.
Research Rick and Doug Analytics. They're certainly going to be tracking it. I agree with you. You were talking about the benefit of this in terms of accountability and not going behind people's backs. I do think this is a benefit of the leader of the organization, that being John Mara, can equally hear both people out. And I guess this is mostly in cases of if there is a disagreement, right?
Right. And John Mara's famous for saying he'll break ties too. Remember that.
Which I don't love that. Can equally hear both people out, what is going on. And if anything, I do think this can be better for overall accountability, since both sides will have the opportunity to report to the same person. Like, how often was Brian Dable one-on-one sitting alone in John Mara's office? I don't know.
Maybe never. Based on this, though, Justin, based on this, maybe never. Unless John Mara really wanted to speak with him himself. It's not Dable getting the chance to speak with Mara. Yeah. Think about it. If this is not how the Giants have done things, I can't imagine Brian Dable had many one-on-ones with John Mara without Joe in the room.
I get the vibe, and I've gotten the vibe since Hard Knocks, the off-season Hard Knocks. Dable with his feet up on the table, wearing Jordans and just being super casual. I just get the vibe that maybe rubbed John Mara wrong, as somebody who's probably a little bit more of a traditionalist. You know what I mean? Right. I like the head coach of the New York Giants going in a player interview, going in a coach interview, and having your feet up on the coffee table. I think that kind of shit, I think maybe, this is speculation, maybe just bugged him and rubbed him the wrong way. So again, I think for overall accountability, for overall, even in cases where you're not disagreeing, just equally hearing both people out, having to report to the same person, where the leader of the organization can either, if somebody's bullshitting you or not, is everybody actually on the same page? Is somebody bullshitting me? Who's in this situation that kind of knows their ass from their elbow? That I feel like is the benefit of that.
Right. And I think to a deeper meaning, right, the role of the general manager has to, by virtue, get changed a little bit if the head coach is directly dealing with ownership. And what I mean by that is, even stuff like game day roster management, where I think we thought Joe Schoen had his fingerprints all over, right, with the Graham Gano situation, who's getting elevated, all these active. I think like that is all like 110% Harbaugh stuff. And Joe Schoen, in terms of like the general manager, they're going to handle the final contract stuff. You'll have your cap guy. Maybe Joe Schoen himself has to be more of a cap guy. Okay, what can we make work? What can't we make work? But ultimately, like,
that's Kevin Abrams' job. How are you forgetting that?
I understand that's Kevin Abrams' job, but my point is, like, think about what Joe Schoen, I'm sure, is going to make recommendations for players and all this, but John Harbaugh is going to report to ownership ahead of free agency, ahead of the draft, and saying, this is kind of what I need to do, X, Y, and Z. Okay, go talk to Joe Schoen about this X, Y, and Z, where Joe Schoen was the one coming to Brian Dable with, this is what we should do. Can you help me?
Right.
Break. And look, Joe Schoen was pretty good in terms of like Dable wanted Jackson Dart. All right, I'll go make the trade for Jackson Dart. I will listen to you on recommendations, but ultimately I'm making the call on all of this by reporting to ownership straight. Harbaugh is going straight to ownership with what he needs on virtue of all of these big moments when they're ahead of them.
So again, this was not over GM Joe Schoen. This is from Ian O'Connor's first article that he put out last week over the conversation that he had with Harbaugh over the phone. So, but I want this to set the scene here. Harbaugh said that he looks forward to building a strong partnership with Giants GM Joe Schoen, who is entering the final year of his contract. I really like Joe. We had great football talks, great life talks, Harbaugh said. He's a hard worker, and I'm ready for us to roll up our sleeves. Pause. Ian O'Connor, in the most recent article that he put out on Monday, detailed that instead of Harbaugh driving his F-150, which do you get flashbacks of Dable walking out of that F-150?
Yep.
But Harbaugh actually does have an F-150, planning to drive up from Baltimore to East Rutherford, having a couple hours of thoughts to himself, thinking about football. Instead, Steve Tisch's jet shows up to Baltimore. Who's on that jet? Joe Schoen. So they had time to really, get to know each other, talk through football things and more like that. And I guess that's where they make their first face-to-face interaction with each other. The respect is mutual. And this is what Joe Schoen had to say about John Harbaugh. Throughout our conversations, John stood out for his clarity, competitiveness, and approach for building a sustainable winning program. Schoen said he has a strong track record of developing players, building cohesive staffs, and setting a clear standard of accountability. We are excited to work with John in moving this team in the right direction. Now, Sean, this is the big, important quote. The quote that we will be analyzing, dissecting, reading over and over again all through the offseason, wondering what are these conversations and what will they mean? What will they mean for the team moving forward? I think this quote that I'm about to read is the biggest reason why there was this 3-day delay.
Give it to me, baby.
But first, I got to talk to you about SeatGeek. Today's episode is brought to you by SeatGeek. Of course, we're in the MLB offseason, but guess what? Go to the conference championship game. Go to it. Run to it. Go to Denver and watch Jarrett Stidham take on Drake May. Tommy DeVito has an opportunity to win a Super Bowl. You ever think about that? Get a Super Bowl ring. If you were to tell us back in 2023, Tommy DeVito 3 years from now is going to win a Super Bowl, you would say, hell yes, he is, because it's with us as the starter. Everybody thought that. Of course, there's the NBA going on as well. Even the World Cup is coming this summer as well, which is why I want to give a shout out to the sponsor of today's podcast, SeatGeek. With over 35 million downloads, SeatGeek is the number one rated ticketing app in the entire world. I'm actually going to see Charlie Puth. I love Charlie Puth in May at MSG. And I was able to get my tickets through SeatGeek because I use code JOHNBOY10 for 10% off your next set of tickets at SeatGeek. That's 10% off any tickets with promo code JOHNBOY10. Make sure you click the link in the description to download the app if you have the code and automatically have it added to your account so you can use it later. Thank you, SeatGeek. Okay.
What's your favorite Charlie Puth song before you pay for the teas?
Attention is just really, really good.
Okay, I get down with that.
Boom, 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 boom. Really.
Yeah, you sound just like him, man. You sound just like him.
Thank you. I didn't want to give a full. I could if you want me to. All right.
Maybe we end with
the big important quote.
Okay.
This wasn't about Joe Schoen. The coach definitely feels like he can work with the GM. Harbaugh wanted the ability to impact the entire operation, from security to training to analytics to media relations to staff size to assistant salaries to relocation expenses to you name it. And yes, in the unlikely event there's a stalemate on draft day between Harbaugh and Schoen, there's no longer any question who will prevail. Chris Maris says, I think both sides needed to huddle up and make sure we were all on the same page at the end of the day. It took a little more give and take for both sides to come to an agreement. I think it was more or less give on the Giants' part. In fact, nothing was settled as late as Saturday morning. Harlan being John Harbaugh's agent, had the Titans on standby. One league source said if things fell apart at 1 p.m., I would not have been surprised. Sean,
amazing
From security to training to analytics to media relations to staff size to assistant salaries to relocation expenses, you name it.
That's everything. That is everything. And this is, I mean, if you were ranking complaints from Giant fans, many of which listen to us, thank you all out there, about what is your biggest issue with this organization constantly, it's that everything sucks. Everything is, it's the same people that have been in that. Now, by the way, like sucks is a strong word, but you know what I mean? When it's the same people in the building doing a little bit of everything, it could be looked at as a positive where like, hey, it's always a good place to work. You know, they have your back forever. But when the team stinks for a decade and everybody just kind of lives in it and wallows in it, it just, you become used to it and nothing truly changes the energy of the room. And like that might seem like a little thing. Like when he mentions PR, like there are good PR people that work for the New York Giants. We know a lot of their names that have been around forever. Like it's okay to have like a new fashion look at like how, you handle the media or like the security stuff, the training, even the analytics. Justin, was this in the same post piece? Because I've read a million Ian O'Connor pieces. Maybe it was the Albert Breer piece, but the analytics stuff that John in Baltimore. Did you see this where he had the analytics constantly being fed to him through cutting edge technology in his headset throughout the entire game? And he wanted to bring
I
that
didn't
to the
see
Giants
that.
as well?
I did read the Albert Breer piece. I don't remember specifically anything about that, but he did mention how there was work that needed to be done here with the quote unquote analytics department, whatever that may mean. But the one thing that he did praise, the Giants have a robust sports science department. So they don't need much work there.
All right, great. So that's the one thing they have going for with sports science. But like, it's refreshing, right? Because think about when we argued about why the Giants were keeping Joe Schoen originally, before we thought John Harbaugh was coming. What do we keep hearing? Like, well, he revolutionized the draft room. They're no longer doing magnets. It's electric board. Remember how many times we heard that and we're like, what was somebody can't come in and get the passwords and figure out how to run the boards and stuff? So like, the Giants love that stuff. If they love Joe Schoen because he revolutionized the draft room, like John Harbaugh probably blew their freaking mind at how much more needed to be revolutionized inside that building in terms of like the analytics, even like he brings up security, random stuff like that. Like in organizational overhaul with an organization that cannot get out of its own way and is so reluctant and feels uneasy about it. Like if this alone is what John Harbaugh is bringing to the Giants and makes them feel better about it, like I'm okay if John Harbaugh has a couple wild card losses early and we struggle to get to the Super Bowl. If this is like the first steps to it, like I think we'll all sign for that if this is truly what's happening.
It has to be for these people that have had their roles for so long, right? And especially if you point to, well, if you're in media relations, then it's, well, the media portrays it in a certain way and how they cover the planes and things like that. And it creates a negative energy in the building. Okay. So that's pointing the finger. It's somebody else's fault. How many years have we gone, whether it's training, how many years have we gone by saying, man, the Giants have had some bad luck with injuries, man. Giants have had some bad luck with injuries. You lose Saquon Barkley here. You lose Malik Neighbors here. You lose Cam Scatterbo here. Whoever can't stay healthy, right? How many years have we pointed to that? And it's bad luck, bad luck, bad luck. It's not the field. It's not this. It's not that. Let's point the finger to everything else besides looking in the mirror and being like, well, can it be us? Can it be any, do we have any single facet of what we're doing is influencing what's happening here and why they're losing. And that's what I kind of think Harbaugh through his first week here is trying to simply do. Well, it's like, well, you've changed the coach and you haven't changed the GM a ton, but you even changed the GM and you brought in somebody completely from the outside that was kind of immune to all this. And then even he's turned into shit too somehow. So what is it? Like, what is it?
Or when shit stinks, dude, don't lie to us, right? Like that's the other thing. Amongst all of this like crap football the Giants have put out there and crap problems that were obvious to the naked eye to any average fan, the Giants managed always to have these PR spins like we were the crazy ones, right? John Harbaugh is going to get right to the point or whatever. Like that kind of like overly protective nonsense that comes out of the Giants that makes everybody else feel like they're an idiot is a major turnoff to fans, to media alike. That kind of stuff may not matter on the field, but it matters throughout it permeates throughout the building. Like that's something Harbaugh's going to clean up. I think that all of that matters. Yeah. It just matters.
I think it's even like thinking if you work in a good working environment in an office, right? Which I'm very happy that unfortunately, I'm going to report this to the people that don't like the company that I work with. I love where I work. I love the people that I work with. Is every day perfect? No. Are most days very, very good and very, very fun? And are there great people there? Yes. And the fact that there's great people there, I think helps us get good results. I think helps us continue to make money and get views. And I think those things work together hand in hand. And if you're at a company that you enjoy it as well, odds are you enjoy the people. And if you are at a company where you don't like it and you have to work with other people, obviously people that work more like solo jobs. If you're kind of just like, for example, my buddy Noodles is in sanitation. You know, he's driving in his truck alone. I recognize there's a lot of people out there that may be like that, but you know, if you're at a place where you don't like your job, then odds are it could be a toxic environment, and then shit may not be going well because people don't work well together. So I don't know, man, like even though family is working together and there could be some facets of the organization that do work together, I could also imagine when you lose, it's not fun and people turn on each other. Which, Sean, we see that all the time. Like without being in the building, I even going back to 2019 when I was a nobody in 2019, there were people that were still talking about what's going on in the building, and I somehow was hearing it with a very, very limited, low amount of following. People turn on each other when shit goes bad, and they point the finger, and they throw people under the bus, and that's the type of shit that has been happening there for I don't know how long since they've last won. That's what's been happening. Yeah, that's the culture there.
Justin, I'll go a step further, and this is going to be funny, and but let's just be real. You and I do this for a living. We've been fortunate enough to, you know, make enough contacts, build enough. But in the reality of the spectrum, in 2025, 2026, you and I should not know as much information as we know about the New York Football Giants.
No.
Like, if we're being real, we shouldn't. And that is part of the building's fault. When you think about it, I'm grateful I do. But at the same time, like, if in the next 2 years I hear way less stuff, I'm going to take it as a positive because that means the team's probably playing well and they've cleaned up their act on leaks. And I think that's probably
people feel the need to talk to save their own ass.
Right. They need an outlet to get it out there.
That's not healthy.
No, it's not. It's not healthy. I'm okay I'm okay knowing way less bull crap if the team is winning 10 games a year and they've overhauled the culture of the room. Believe me. Because at my heart, I'm still a Giant fan first. Yeah. I want to bring up one more thing with this whole like structure and everything that goes into it. You know, one thing I really want to have my eye on here, as John Harbaugh probably addresses a lot of this in the press conference. Like, I don't expect Joe Schoen to say much, but here's a thought. And I remember this going back to past press conferences. And it may have been when Dable was hired and Sterling Shepard showed up with like the freaking leg injury on the crutches. I got my eye on what players are at this press conference, dude, to kind of hear these first words from John Harbaugh. And you talked about, was it you about 20 minutes? Oh, I'm the only one talking to you. 20 minutes ago, you said something to the effect of like, hey, I'm going to get excited. I'm sure I will, but I got to brace myself. I think what players are at this press conference is going to be an early tell to who is really going to be a Harbaugh guy on this football team. I know these guys have made vacation plans. I know that it's the offseason, but if you're serious about being a New York Giant under John Harbaugh, I'm not saying it means you're not serious by being there, but I know you're serious. So, like, if Dexter Lawrence is not at this
That's the first name I was going to think of.
Yep. I mean, it's a perfect example, right? Like, if Dexter Lawrence isn't here, then I'm not so sure. If Dexter Lawrence is there, I'm convinced he's a Giant. You know what? Yeah. He's pumped up to be here. Darius Slayton, Andrew Thomas. Like, I'm pretty confident Jackson Dart's going to show up. I'm imagining Cam Scatterbo is going to be there. Yeah. I got my eye on certain stuff like that because you're going to find out really quickly because Harbaugh, you think he's cleaning up the power structure. This was kind of my long point. He's going to clean up that room too. And he's not going to give a crap about dead cap money in that first year if he's not getting his guys in there or guys that he thinks are going to be Harbaugh guys in there. And don't tell me you can't win without dead cap money on the freaking books. Look at what the Broncos are doing with Russell Wilson. Like, we could get surprise cuts, and certain guys who are not at this press conference, look back on that when their moment happens and you realize they probably saw the writing on the wall too.
Can I hold you to it to tweet out a list of players that you saw?
Absolutely. Can't wait to do that. Can't wait. As long as I'm in that actual room and they don't have me tucked away, which we're going to iron that all out in the morning.
Do you have anything else? I mean, the only other notes that I have here, it's simply just about the Mara, like reporting to John Mara's structure, which I initially wrote like, well, what could there be reasons for pessimism here? With how John Harbaugh and Joe Schoen both have to report to John Mara. It's like, number one, I don't want John Mara overly involved in football operations more than he has to, but I don't think that's going to be, I simply think he's going to kind of just be like a mediator if things kind of like, if they're not on the same page.
I also think we're overselling this a little bit as far, I don't know, it had to be in writing to understand why. When you say reporting and this is what's been out there, like they're going to report to them. I think the immediate reaction is what you're doing, which is like, hey, I have problems, I'm reporting to you. I think no, literally like every week, Joe Schoen would meet with John Mara. And I think all this means is I don't want Joe Schoen giving him what I'm telling him to John Mara. I'm going to tell him right to my, like I'm reporting to you every week. Here's the coach's report. This is what I think. So it's not necessarily just about, hey, I have a problem with him. I have a problem with him. Daddy, please break an issue. It's more or less of like, I want to make sure my message is clear to ownership on what the hell is going on here on a week-to-week basis. And it's not the general manager feeding him secondhand what I fed him and not knowing what the spin's going to be. So it's not, you know what I mean, Justin? I don't think it's like, hey, I don't want him overly involved in football decisions. I think it literally means like, John Mara, and I guess now at this point, Chris Mara, they're going to want to know each week, all right, what's going on? Why did we do this? What happened in practice here? And that's not just going to come from the GM.
I eventually got to the part of my notes where I was like, what really is going to be different for John Mara as I was going through like, oh, I don't really love John Mara being involved with the football operations. But then I'm thinking again, like what's really going to be different? The only, if anything, just another thing is going to be added to ownership's plate where they're just going to be talking to the head coach more, which seems like a positive thing.
Right. You should be speaking to the head coach. Then there's no way to get through that. And I think the other takeaway, since Chris Mara met with John Harbaugh that second time on Friday, and obviously everybody's brought up the John Mara health situation.
Which that's the second part of my notes here.
I don't expect John Mara to say a lot at this press conference, but I would say that if Chris Mara has gotten off the ground running and he had that other meeting and he's met now, twice here, and then Tish's plane's involved, I think if Chris Mara is the guy who's going to be making a lot of football calls as John Mara battles with this health issue and hopefully beats it, I think it's a good sign early that Chris and John Harbaugh have established at least this much of a relationship in Chris's willingness to want to get John Harbaugh to work here. I think that will provide dividends down the future.
Has Chris Mara ever spoke?
Couldn't tell you what he sounds like. Could not tell you.
No, I just looked him up on YouTube and just, I don't know if we've ever heard from him.
I know he had run his own scouting department company at one point.
He left a little bit and then to come back and eventually be the GM of the Giants. And then apparently Steve Tisch shut that down. So I really wonder too, and is this part of the reason why we've seen Chris Mara more involved in this search and more involved with football operations over the last year? And it kind of started with him being in Mobile for the Senior Bowl, which he seemed to distance himself in 2022 and then 2023, like the early years of Joe Schoen. And really when they were getting grilled about nepotism after the 21 season and then before hiring Schoen in 2022, it seemed like Chris Mara started to distance himself. And then over the last year, which I can imagine possibly John Mara knowing about the presence of his cancer dates back to the early part of last year. And maybe that's where Chris Mara starts to make a comeback and he is more seen and he is more available. And he is just visibly more there without us fully actually knowing what he's doing and what say he has, which I wanted to ask Gary Myers that. I want to spend a part of my conversation. Hopefully Ian O'Connor is going to come on the show and then I will be like, just tell me what he does.
Ian will have a good idea.
I just don't know. I don't know. We want to get mad and we want to criticize it. I just don't know.
You will get good. I'm pumped to hear you, Amity. Ian will give you the best answer on that possible. He will know the most of what's going on out of that situation.
A couple more quotes that I want to read. One of them is coming from the Albert Breer article where he expanded upon Tom Coughlin a little bit more. I'm very excited about these players, John Harbaugh said, speaking of players being at the press conference. I spoke with Jackson 2 or 3 times at length. Could be more impressed with him. Watched him on tape. He had a heck of a rookie season. He's got the right mindset. That's one tough dude. Harbaugh also spoke with ex-Giants coach Tom Coughlin during the process. He was a big part of this process for me. I've admired him as a coach and friend, and he really encouraged me to go forward with the Giants. Albert Breer expanded upon the impact of Tom Coughlin. He talked extensively with legends like Eli Manning and Michael Strahan. He also reached out to the highest profile coaching hire the franchise had made before this one, and Tom Coughlin, who was in a similar spot in 2004 to Harbaugh, coming aboard later in his career after a lengthy successful run with an AFC team, he saw an impactful advising as Harbaugh to take the job. Quote, the number one guy for me was Tom Coughlin, Harbaugh said. I spent a lot of time talking to Tom. Even today, I talked to Tom numerous times that was probably my number one go-to guy about the Giants that's not currently in the organization. So between meeting with Jackson Dart extensively, talking with Eli, talking with Strahan, Tom Coughlin being like the number one confidant, the Maris suddenly flexing their muscles, Steve Tisch sends the Giants private plane. Did I mention Brian Dable somehow being part of this too?
Yeah.
The Giants fan fiction is complete.
Yeah, everybody involved. I have a sneaky suspicion Brian Dable warned him to get a lot of what he wanted in writing, but that's neither here nor there. I think that might have been part of the conversation. But really good job by Tom Coughlin, because that's the guy, right? Like John Harbaugh has the pedigree, actually more than Tom Coughlin had coming in, because he actually won the Super Bowl instead of just getting to the AFC title games. And this is where that stuff that we've complained about in the past, that we've complained about on this podcast, where the Giants are all these same people in the room at the same time. But you know what? That also proves dividends, because when you treat people well, and seemingly the Giants do treat all of these ex-coaches and everything well, they handle everything seemingly with class, then that stuff pays it forward. And that's how you get a John Harbaugh, where everybody is speaking really well and high regarded about this. Tennessee Titans can't do that, man. Like John Harbaugh's not getting on a call with Jeff Fisher to figure out what the hell the Titans are doing. Like, it's just, you know what I mean? Like, that's what separates the Giants here, and that's when you need the chips to be down.
Get on the phone with, who's it, Ryan Carthon that got fired after a year?
Exactly. Mike Malarkey.
Let's talk about DraftKings, and then we're going to get into some offense coordinator and defensive coordinator candidates, Sean. This episode is brought to you by DraftKings. The DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, makes every playoff moment feel bigger. DraftKings has your back with early exit protection. If the player in your eligible NFL prop bet goes down at any point in the first half, you could still get paid in cash. Here's the best part. New customers bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Use code JMFootball. That's code JMFootball to turn $5 into $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. Sean, let's start off with offense coordinator. Obviously, what everybody is a little bit more invested in, because you got a quarterback named Jackson Dart, you got a running back named Cam Scadaboo, and a wide receiver named Malik Neighbors. It's pretty fun. It basically feels like we're Todd Monken or bust unless he lands the head coaching job. Please don't take the Browns job. Why would you do that to yourself? Mm-hmm. I really do feel like Todd Monken can be for Jackson Dart what Josh McDaniels was / kind of is for Drake May, a guy that you kind of know. Like, I really don't think Todd Monken is going to be like the hot candidate to land a head coaching job. He's also like on the plus side of 60, I think. So he could just be a guy that's there and stable for Jackson Dart. It feels like it could be a McDaniels type of hire if he does not get the Browns job. Yes.
Counterpoint, man, if they come in guns a-blazing year one with Monken, if he doesn't take the Browns job, and Dart is awesome, and you're seeing like that Drake May jump in year two, and again, I'm not telling you he's Drake May, but my point is, would Monken not immediately, if he's already getting cycles, be a hot head coaching candidate next year?
Maybe it's my initial wishful thinking that we could
but your point,
he would never leave.
Yeah, but your point, yeah. I mean, for all the hate we gave Kevin Gilbride at times over, boy, get me back to Kevin Gilbride days. Jeez, imagine complaining then when they were making the playoffs a bunch and stuff. He was a guy that, while he took some coaching interviews and everything, and people blame him for the 2008 playoff loss, and like, he was there forever, it felt like, paired up with Tom Coughlin. I know Huffnagel was there before, but whatever. The point is, yeah, stability there, and a guy that could just be healthy for Dart for many, many years here in this run. I mean, that's a dream. And a guy that's done it before, and a guy who I think is, again, his system that he's, had Lamar Jackson kind of play up to an MVP level. I just think fits Jackson Dart's skill set so incredibly well. I really do.
Yeah, I really do like Monken's offense. It was a very, very good transition away from Greg Roman, but it wasn't like this like hard left or right turn, like just this 90-degree turn away from it. You could say that the run offense maybe was not as kick-ass, but they still were like one of the best in the league. But definitely the passing efficiency just got so much better. And I think the passing efficiency and Monken's passing offense is the type of offense that can win in the postseason versus Greg Roman. I think just reach a ceiling with him. I think the Chargers figured that out. And you could even roll your eyes looking at the Ravens postseason success too. But again, look at how they've lost some of those postseason games and then try and blame that on the offense coordinator. Maybe the only thing you can say, ironically enough, is that they don't run the ball enough and that they've strayed away from the run, which I think that would be a valid reply. But I do like Monken's offense without getting too numbers heavy because I started to do like, especially the morning, like the Thursday morning where they first linked like Monken likely to join Harbaugh. I like head first dove in and then it slowed down. So then I've stopped. But here are like my big picture takeaways. I love the way that Monken uses personnel. Like you can look at it like 11 personnel, that they don't run 11 personnel a ton, but the presence of Patrick Ricard is a huge piece to that. I think if Todd Monken is hired as OC, priority number one signing of this offseason is Patrick Ricard, because I think he is one of the more underrated weapons in the NFL that never touches the ball. And the Ravens have like a plan to use that. Like, I'm not just talking about like a Levine Toilolo, Chris Manhertz that is just like, oh yeah, he's a good blocker, but they know how to like use him where 20 personnel, like Patrick Ricard will be counted as a fullback. When you chart personnel grouping frequencies, right? When you chart 20 personnel for the Ravens, which would be 2 running backs, 0 tight ends, 3 wide receivers, that technically could be 11 personnel if Patrick Ricard is lined up as this inline tight end with this hand in the dirt. So then you can throw out of that. You can run out of that. Now, Patrick Ricard is not catching the football. He is not like this. He is not a tight end, but they line him up at tight end, Sean. So that's why I think when you look at the lack of 11 personnel that the Ravens have run and what Todd Monken was billed as for Lamar Jackson was, oh, they're running more 11 personnel. They're spreading the field out more. They're spreading the ball out more. They're using wide receivers more. That is true. But then when you look at the data behind it, and you kind of have to, I think, like, you kind of have to keep this in the back of your brain. Sometimes 11 personnel or 20 personnel can be 11 personnel, and that's why that skews the data and why it seems like they don't run with those 3 wide receiver sets all that much.
Yeah, and that's huge for the versatility of the offense. But let me just throw one at you, and I get it, right? That's the easy assumption. Ricard did this role with Monken, played with Harbaugh, locker room guy, all of that. Everything you ask Ricard to do, could you not ask and get better pass catching out of it Daniel Bellinger to do if you brought him back?
No, because Ricard can also be a fullback.
I know he's bigger, he's fatter, he's bulkier. I understand all that.
And he's
Bellinger's a hell of
that too.
I know, but Bellinger's such a good blocker, man. Like
he's not a Bellinger. I think
it just gives you more flexibility in the pass game. That's the only reason I bring it up. And
yeah, which I mean, that's still like you can bring Daniel Bellinger back and you can run
a second tight end, sure.
You can run. It would technically be 13 personnel, but then that would be 22 personnel where you would have 1 running back, the fullback Ricard, and then you have Bellinger and Theo out there. So it looks like 13, but it's actually 22. Yeah. So that's why I get so like giddy when thinking about that, because there's data out there, Sean, that don't roll your eyes at me when I say data. There's data out there when I wasn't talking to you, I was talking to listeners. There's data out there that shows like the more personnel like groupings that you can run in a game, it correlates to win probability. Like the more
you keep a defense guessing.
Yes. The more looks you can give, it really does increase the likelihood that you could win the game.
And who did we just learn loves being fed percentages of stuff in their headset?
Apparently John Harbaugh.
Okay. You think he doesn't know that stat?
Apparently John Harbaugh.
Probably.
Yeah, I think that's the power of Patrick Ricard. So it's kind of funny that I'm talking about Todd Monken's offense, and within that I'm talking way more about Patrick Ricard than Todd Monken. But that's how seriously important I think he is to what somebody like Monken wants to do.
Dude, and watch a Raven game and watch a Giant game. We are so conditioned because of the lack of weapons over years just to go, all right, the Giants have their slot receiver, Wan'Dale Robinson, Darius Slayton's on the outside, Malik Neighbors is on the outside. They have a tight end up. They're going to run 11. Here comes Bellinger and Theo. And we're just going to alternate between between Tracy and between Scadaboo. And like, that's it. When you watch Ravens games, like Zay Flowers does not have to be on the field every snap for them to go find a deep threat pass at some point. You brought up like obviously going from the 20 to the 11, like the different look stuff. I think we've just gotten used to never seeing in the Giant offense because of the lack of amount of bodies they've had. I mean, watch a Bills game too, where they kind of run all this different stuff. And you're like, wow, they're running 3 tight ends down there at once in the goal line. They're having 15 different wide receivers run all over the place. Like Monken's versatility, I think, just adds to where like this depth just needs to be like figured out for the New York Giants on offense.
He was used more under Greg Roman, 41%, 57%, 64% from 2020 to 2022. Big usage in 2022 with 698 snaps. 2023 and 2024, 39% of the offensive snaps. That's nothing to sneeze at. And on the field for 440 snaps each of those years. Now this year, he was hurt. He missed 6 games, but 41% of the snaps that he was eligible to play, 41% of the game, which he was healthy, 41% of the snaps he did play, he still logged almost 300 snaps this year despite missing 6 games. So, I mean, this is, while it's not like, oh my God, this guy's going to be on the field every single game. I think it could help, especially the run game. It dramatically changes, I think, the ceiling of the run game. And I'm gonna be so big on this, Sean, this offseason. I'm going to be so big on adding offensive linemen that are big, that weigh a lot. Because I think that's what the dominant lines in the league, they're just big. And you hear John Eric Sullivan of the new GM of the Dolphins. If you listen to his presser, I mean, he's talked about that with Green Bay, and he's talking about that now with the Dolphins. Patrick, I mean, you want to talk about a guy that's adding size. I mean, what's he listed at, Ricard? He's listed at 300 pounds. He's listed at 300 pounds.
He's enormous. Enormous. That boiler is unbelievable in front of him.
But I want to get back to Monken too. What Monken, I feel like, did transition away from Greg Roman outside of, kind of keeping certain elements of that offense alive and keeping a kick-ass run offense, Ricard being part of that. But in terms of the passing game, I think Monken spaced out the offense more. Where when you're relying on wide receivers, and the Ravens started to invest more at wide receivers. We're drafting Zay Flowers. Odell Beckham Jr. was featured in that for a year. Nelson Aguilar a little bit too. Rashad Bateman started to take a little bit more of a step up under Todd Monken and through the latter years of his rookie deal, right? But what Monken did is, instead of these condensed formations, where condensed formations don't necessarily give the quarterback a lot of space to operate, we're going to widen out the passing offense a little bit more. We're going to put guys closer to the sidelines. So then when we're designing these plays, if the quarterback does want to scramble and if the quarterback does want to run, there is naturally going to be more space for him to do so. And if you want to show cover zero, it's going to be a lot more difficult for you to show cover zero and actually get cover zero home when you're spaced out, versus when you do have a spaced out 11 personnel, you can get rid of the ball quick, you can throw hot, and then you can possibly get bit with yards after the catch. And then maybe that cover zero look trying to be aggressive could result in a big explosive play. And I think that's the type of stuff that Monken did, helping space out the offense and give more options for Lamar. Because I think in the postseason, what kind of happened with Greg Roman is teams started to just heavy blitz Lamar Jackson. He has to play hero backyard ball, and they didn't give answers and options for Lamar. And I think Monken kind of built that into his offense.
He did, and that's also where having just speed all over the field on offense plays in, right? Zay Flowers, fast guy. Obviously, when they had Duvernay, fast guy. Rashad Perriman, when he was brought in, it's all about speed. On that Ravens, they drafted for speed, and a lot of those guys weren't necessarily good. A couple of those names I brought up, and Zay Flowers was. The Giants need to add more speed to this offense in the offseason. It's not just about Wan'Dale Robinson taking hits across the middle, and that's why I'd be okay if he walked. They need guys that fly to make that work.
Another name, probably I'm very fascinated by his resume and where he goes and what he does, but I think he could be an option if Monken does not come here. T. Martin from Mobile, Alabama, funny enough. Yes.
So you tweet this.
He's been in Baltimore for the last 5 years. 2 years, I believe he was wide receiver coach, and then he spent the last 3 years as the quarterback coach.
So that's grooming a guy to move his way up.
He has already interviewed for the Lions offense coordinator job, which he's not going to get because they just filled that today with the coordinator from the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good hire. And then also he's interviewed for the Commanders offense coordinator spot as well. So he's already getting interviews. Ravens quarterback
David
coach
Blau got hired for that already.
Okay, so then he's not getting either of those jobs. I did not see if he was interviewed by anybody else I did not see it.
Okay.
Those are the two that Jordan Schultz confirmed that he interviewed for. So the last 3 years, obviously Lamar has taken great strides as a passer. 2019 to 2020, he was the wide receiver coach and assistant head coach at the University of Tennessee. Helped coach guys up like Jawan Jennings. Like I loved Jawan Jennings coming out of Tennessee, especially knowing that Jawan Jennings was like a slower wide receiver at Tennessee. Didn't feel natural, but he was really, really good, and he kicked ass, and Jawan Jennings is a kick-ass player. 2012 to 2018, he was a wide receiver coach at USC and then promoted to offense coordinator in 2015. Helped coach guys like Juju Smith-Schuster, Nelson Aguilar, Robert Woods, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. And then, of course, he was also a quarterback at the University of Tennessee who won a national championship in 1998 after backing up Peyton Manning for 2 years. And, man, did he have a really, really good collegiate career. That is a resume, Sean, that really, really intrigues me. Being a wide receiver coach, first of all, being a collegiate quarterback, and then being a wide receiver coach for so long, and then finally kind of getting the opportunity to be a quarterback coach for Lamar Jackson and then seeing the strides that he made as a passer the last 3 years. It's a resume that very, very much interests me without knowing that a full-on track record besides looking back to 10 years ago when he called plays at USC.
That, first of all, great research by you, because all that tells me after his post-playing career, he's made enough stops and had enough jobs and worked in enough different meeting rooms between wide receivers and quarterbacks, and obviously being an OC in college, that certainly he's worthy enough to do that. Looking for a little Giant connection, as we always do too. He backed up Peyton Manning. You think Peyton Manning probably has good words to say, tells Eli Manning. Eli Manning is a trusted voice with the New York Giants. That, kind of eases their concerns. But then again, it shouldn't matter because it should just be John Harbaugh's call, period, and nobody should worry about Giant connections anymore.
I only have one more name for OC that I found as a tie. Okay. And that's just Danny Breer. He's an assistant, an offensive assistant coach for the last 3 seasons in Baltimore. It's his second as an offensive. I wrote down the same title twice. He's been an offensive assistant coach, and he's been on the offensive staff for the last 3 years. Yeah. He worked very closely with the tight ends. In 2023, performed duties in an offensive quality control capacity with the Ravens. He was with the Falcons as an offensive assistant from 2020 to 2021, and a run game specialist in 2022 as well. He served as the Bucs analytics assistant in 2016 before being promoted to defensive assistant coach in 2017 to 2018. Apparently, I found an article that Harbaugh said that Breer and Jameis Winston are very close friends dating back to their time in Tampa together.
That makes sense. And everything I'm reading about this is a classic, now that we're getting to know John Harbaugh a little bit, classic what John Harbaugh likes about him. Quality control, analytics, like all of that background. But my gut would tell me with that background, he kind of remains in some kind of role, like that offensive strategic assistant role. I don't think this is where he would go for the offensive coordinator. But I do think that this guy reeks of a guy that Harbaugh would love to bring with him here and have on staff to kind of jumpstart what he's looking to clean up here analytically for the Giants.
I think it's going to be Monken.
I do too. Yeah. I think, yeah, it's Monken until it's not, because he takes a head coaching job. But are the Cleveland Browns really hiring Todd Monken here? Really?
I hope not.
Yeah. Maybe the Cleveland Browns hire Sean McDermott. Just hire
Jim Schwartz and fire him in a year.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, Jim Schwartz. Speaking of Jim, defensive coordinator, Jim Leonard.
I mean, that's Jim the name everybody. Right. That's the guy that every team is salivating that they think he's basically going to be it, and probably within a year or two ends up catapulting up to be a head coach hire. But I'm all in on the Jim Leonard hype if that's what he chooses to do. Yeah,
and Pretty Ricky, our guy Ricky, and even Anthony Betts, who's been all over the Harbaugh situation and the Harbaugh timeline, started putting out Wisconsin Badger gifts and things like that the second that Harbaugh was hired, and that kind of indicates that Jim Leonard, who currently is the defensive pass game coordinator / assistant head coach with the Denver Broncos, that he could be in line. What's the connection, you may ask? The connection to Harbaugh is that he played for the Ravens in 2008 and then Rex Ryan and the Jets for the next 3 from 2009 to 2011. And, of course, Rex Ryan was the defensive coordinator for John Harbaugh in his first year as coach as well. So
And let's be honest, that Jim Leonard is going to take a job where he looks at the personnel in front of him and like what's going to escalate him to become a head coach soon. So if he looks at the pass rushers the Giants have, and obviously working under Harbaugh and feeling like he get touched with that, obviously coming from Sean Payton will help too. Like that's what's going to be on Jim Leonard's mind. How do I have the best defense possible? It's going to catch. You know the next step with these guys. He's an ideal guy in 2-3 years as a head coach.
And I think that number 5 overall pick likely being defense.
Yeah, get Caleb Downs in here and away we go.
Or I mean, I'll tell you what, I started, just looking into and reading about Jim Leonard's defense, and a lot of very smart Badger fans talking, analyzing like his third down defense and things like that. I think Orville Reese could be a very, very fun chess piece for a defense like this.
I'd be in.
Again, to go through his background, he's been with the Broncos since 2024. He got promoted to assistant head coach this year. He has a very, very long track record of coaching secondaries and getting good results out of them. Goes back to the University of Wisconsin, but he has a career before this. But the relevant information is DB coach at the University of Wisconsin 2016, defensive coordinator and defensive backs coach from 2017 to 2022, and then he's the interim head coach of Wisconsin in 2022. He was a senior football analyst in 2023 at the University of Illinois, and then he goes to the Denver Broncos. This is not a guy that, despite working for Vance Joseph over the last 2 years, maybe he has learned things and like, hey, maybe he will become a little bit more aggressive, but based on his play calling at the University of Wisconsin, this is not going to be a Flores, Vance Joseph, Wink Martindale type of blitz heavy cover zero defense. They may show zero. They may show that they're going to blitz, but he is going to rush 4 to 5 and he's going to simulate pressure. And it's just about figuring out, if you're the defense, which 4 to 5 guys are coming, which is also why I'm kind of fascinated by Orville Reese in that role, because if you're going to ask Abdul Carter to drop back into coverage, if you're going to ask Brian Burns to drop back into coverage, I just think that's what these guys are going to kind of do to keep opposing offenses on their toes. Sean, before I get some more of your thoughts, I do want to give stats. Third down defense when he was with Wisconsin was very, very good. In 2019, they were number one in the country on third down defense, 27% first down rate. In 2020, they were number 5 in the country, holding teams to 28.74% efficiency. In 2021, his defenses were number 4 in the country on third down, 29.34 completion percentage on third down. And then 2022, it went down to 15th.
I mean,
really good track record there.
Yeah, I think we'd take that 15th in the NFL at that point too. Yeah, yeah, look, and again, the Giants have the requisite amount of pass rushers if they aren't moving on from Kayvon this offseason, which I don't think they would, where you have no problem if it's the guessing game on which 4 or 5 are coming. You add a chess piece or two, and you're not worried about a team that needs to just bring all-out blitzes nonstop because you have already built the padded personnel within that would allow you to not have to do that. Which, again, was part of why Shane Bowen sucked and was so disappointing.
The 2021 Badgers, really good defense. Jack Sanborn was on it. Nick Herbig, who I loved coming out of the draft.
Yeah. They haven't been the same. Wisconsin has basically been nothing since Leonard left. Nothing.
Keanu Benton on that defensive line as like a nose tackle for them. And you want to know who was that linebacker for them? Who was a free agent this offseason, I'm pretty sure.
Is it Leo Chanel?
Leo Chanel. Okay. And I love, and this is why I'm a little fascinated with Reese. I do think that Orville Reese can play. They are different players. Like Chanel's a stronger player, but I do think that Reese
should be a better NFL pro than Chanel, just to be honest. I mean,
yes, and I think Chanel's a very successful draft pick and
very good player. But you're not drafting Leo Chanel in the top 5. You know what I mean?
No, but kind of you can play like the off-ball linebacker. You can put him across from a tackle, and he could be strong, and he could play that. But then also you can put him in the A gap and the B gap, and you could be a solid interior linebacker as well. That's kind of like what Leo Chanel has done with Kansas City at certain points. Like whenever you're trying to look for Leo Chanel, it's like, oh, where is he? He's not an interior linebacker. He's kind of lined up on top of a tackle, lined up on top of a tight end, especially on rushing downs and early downs, and that's kind of how he's being successful there. So I can see that for a guy like Orville Reese. kind of just being this chess piece and going anywhere. And that is a position. Like, that's not just like this Isaiah Simmons, you don't have a position and you're not going to be successful thing.
No, it's a legitimate position. Speaking of defensive coordinators, Jeff Hafley just got announced Dolphins head coach.
Dolphins head coach, really?
Jeff Hafley. Now, remember, they hired the Packer guy, so it makes sense, the general manager.
Yeah. That was the one spot that I was like, I don't know what they're going to do, but that obviously does make sense.
Hafley. Man, remember when we were talking about Hafley in the Giant Packer game? How good does it feel to have John Harbaugh?
I never fully embraced that.
I never did either. But you know what? It feels good to watch the Dolphins hire him and the Giants have John Harbaugh, doesn't it?
I do think I really do think I like what the Packers have built. I like what the Packers have done. I think John Eric Sullivan's going to be a good GM. I do believe that. So, all right, I have two more, technically three more, but I'm not going to spend. No, there's four more. Oh my God. Not going to spend that much time on each one, though, because I think a lot of people are familiar with some of these names. Dennard Wilson, he was the highly sought-after candidate. The offseason, the Giants hired Shane Bowen, but he went with the Tennessee Titans. Brian Callahan was just hired to the Titans job. That looked to be an up-and-coming job. The Giants job looked to be kind of like a lame duck job.
Ironically, both stunk. Yeah.
Ironically, both stunk. But in a way, I think Dennard Wilson would have had a better shot with sticking around.
True. Good point.
With John Harbaugh coming on board, efficiency not great over the last 2 years, but I still really like his resume. Really, really like a press. He is a press man defensive coordinator. Run defense held up well enough this year. In 2024, he was credited with kind of doing more with less. I would need to really kind of sift through the bullshit of how much of it was him, how much of it was the roster. 2024, I will say that that offense turned over the ball a ton and did not do that defense any kind of favors. But I do like Dennard Wilson's resume. I like his background and his pedigree. He was a passing game coordinator, defensive backs coach with the Jets in 2019, 2020, was with the Jets for a couple years. Then with the defensive backs coach with the Eagles in 2021, when they made the Super Bowl, they had a really good defense. 2022, defensive pass game coordinator and defensive backs with the Eagles in 2022. That's when they made the Super Bowl. I'm sorry, 2022. So he was with the Eagles there. They had a really good secondary. Right. James Bradbury was in that secondary. Darius Slay was in that secondary. 2023, here's the Harbaugh tie. He was the DB coach with the Ravens. And then, of course, the last 2 years, he's been the DC for the Tennessee Titans.
Why did he leave the Eagles to go to the Ravens? I would love to know that.
Wait, because Gannon left.
Oh, good call. Gannon got the Cardinal job. He was the DC.
Gannon got the Cardinal job, and I think there was a lot of Eagle fans that wanted Dennard Wilson, not fans. There was a lot of Eagle players that wanted Dennard Wilson to get the promotion to become the DC. They didn't give it to him, and he might have felt some sort of type of way about that. And then he goes to Baltimore.
That makes sense. Okay.
Next guy I do want to talk about is Anthony Weaver. Obviously, the former defensive end of the Ravens from the early 2000s and then the Texans, has been the Miami defensive coordinator the last 2 years, the Miami Dolphins. The tie to John Harbaugh is that from 2021 to 2023, he was the defensive line / run game coordinator. He also was an associate head coach his last 2 years in Baltimore as well. I don't know how I would feel about this, Sean, because I
kind of think this is going to be the guy ultimately.
Really? Oh.
I do. That's what my gut instinct says he ends up being the guy. Now I'm assuming Jim Leonard just picked somewhere else before I say that. You know what I mean?
2024 had much better results than 2025. They were 10th in points per drive in 2024 and 25th in 2025. There were some big rush games allowed by the Dolphins this year. Dude, big rush games.
Dolphins were crushed with injuries on that defensive side of the ball the last couple of years.
I know. And then them trading away Jalen Ramsey before the season starts. I know they got Minka out of it, but trading away a corner didn't help.
It just got so toxic in that room too. Like I know what you're saying.
Jalen Phillips was traded away, and then he goes to Philly, and he's a really good player. Chop Robinson
They didn't sign Christian Wilkins, who I know hasn't played basically in the NFL since, but that was a major loss for that defense the last 2 years.
Jordan Poyer went out in the media saying that the players didn't really grasp Anthony Weaver's scheme, so it seems like there was friction there between the players. So
remember, that's the same defensive guys. Those guys complained about Vic Fangio, too. They were dogs in Miami, that team.
Yeah.
Vic Fangio was too hard on them.
But he had success in 2024. So, and they were like really good.
Yep.
So, Mike Caldwell.
Yes.
That's a guy that you brought up.
Yep.
Jaguars defense coordinator from 2022 to 2023. The tie to Harbaugh is, remind me what that tie is, Sean.
He started his coaching like he was like an intern coach under Harbaugh.
That's right. Defensive quality control coach in 08.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. And that's where he kind of started.
So I guess before he was the defensive quality control coach with the Eagles, he had to still, was he in the organization?
Yes, he worked with the Eagles, like his first like unpaid coaching jobs. He would just follow Harbaugh along at the hip. That was kind of
that's why it's not listed.
Yeah. He would be in every one of Harbaugh's meeting rooms and all that stuff. That was like the research that was done.
So the Jaguars,
he's like a little Harbaugh baby that's become a Todd Bowles baby.
That's right. He was with the Bucks 2025, and then he was with the Jets from 2015 to 2018. So the Jags were 10th in EPA per play in 2022 to 2023. Like over those 2 seasons, they were. Even though the raw numbers don't look good, like their rushing numbers that they've allowed do not look good. The passing numbers do not look good. So if he gets interviewed, we'll look into him a little bit more. And then the Hail Mary tie. Sean McDermott gets fired today.
Mm-hmm.
And Harbaugh and McDermott were on the Eagles staff together from 1999 to 2007. They were in the same building together.
They were in the same building, and Sean McDermott knows Joe Schoen well from, obviously, the Buffalo days.
Oh, huge, yes.
So there's a double tie, and we're talking about who reports to management and everything. They may come together in that. Now, Sean McDermott could go get a head coaching job. He could become the Browns head coach. He become the Cardinals head coach. Like, who knows if any of these teams see Sean McDermott become available and go, oh, my God, we got to have this guy. Or McDermott could go and say, you know what? It's probably best for me not to rush into another head coaching job without me fully doing my, back channel on this. Let me go be a DC again and rehab my image for a year and working under a Harbaugh. Like, we see that happen. Look at what's happened with Robert Saleh going back to work with Kyle Shanahan. And I know that Sean McDermott's had a boatload more success as a head coach, but Vrabel was like some kind of random assistant with Cleveland last year. Could McDermott go be a DC for a year for a giant team that people think is on the come with talent and personnel? I think it's out there. I certainly do.
Are you rooting for that?
I don't know. Here's why I wouldn't root for it, I guess, ultimately, because it just kind of feels like you'd lose him after a year, right? Like Sean McDermott's going to be a head coach again. It kind of feels like you. So am I looking to just get the best first year and just get the best coaches in here possible and establish that culture and then kind of worry about who takes over from McDermott at the year? Or am I looking to hire a guy that I think is here? But if I'm hiring Jim Leonard, I'm assuming he's not here for long either. So
right. That's why
you know
I would, if it makes sense, like, let's get as many successful, like Sean McDermott's a successful head coach. Let's not,
of course.
Like,
and you know what? If the Giants go back to being the team where their coordinators are getting hired for head coaching jobs again, it means the team's good again.
Yeah.
You know?
And luckily we now have a head coach where I trust him hiring his replacement.
Correct. You're right. So I would endorse it. You're right. I've talked myself into it within the last minute and a half.
Yeah, if it's realistic, McDermott, I would love Jim Leonard as well. Then I would put Dennard Wilson. Then I would put Anthony Weaver, and then just not really fully knowing all that much about Mike Caldwell. Yeah. And then that is I this is why, like, hey, listen to the show. I'm glad Sean brought that up, but like that's a tie. That's like a cousin tie, you know.
If we never talk about Mike Caldwell again, then we never talk about him again. But we'd rather be the show that's ahead of it if that name perks up.
I love it. Like, wow, I heard it first on Talking Giants. All right, Sean, long show.
Long show. Good info, though. Good show. I'll be at the press conference.
Sean will be at the press conference at Sean Morash _ or just at Sean Morash?
At Sean Morash. I'm going to try to get as many pictures, give you kind of a feel on what players were there. I'm going to do it. Like, I have no idea what I'm expecting, to be honest. This is actually my first coaching press conference one. I've done some Yankee ones, so of all these giant ones. So I'll try to give you the lay of the land. And if I'm not posting anything directly, I'm going to feed it to Justin for the Talking Giants feed as well.
I love it. Yeah, listen to WFAN too.
That's it. We'll be there live.
10
setting the scene. 10 to 2. We'll be there setting the scene, carrying the press conference live, and then maybe a surprise guest after the press conference we're working on. We'll see.
Wonder who that would be. Chris Mara.
We'll see. We'll see.
All right. Thank you so much for listening. Hopefully expect an interview in the back end of the week, and then you'll see Sean and I early next week. Maybe they'll make a coordinator hire. Maybe they'll make some sort of hires and the coaching staff, and we'll start to fill this damn thing out. And then I'm going to Mobile, Alabama, and I'll be talking about whatever happens down there as well. So appreciate you guys. Let's go Giants.